All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to my blog at techtalkfriday.com. And today I have a very special treat for you today. And it's been a while since the last time I recorded a video for you guys, but it's been a little bit challenging, to be honest, to get to the level of, let's say, to put it in a way that is actually functional for most of the people. And what I wanted to talk to you about is doing how we are going to do a continuous integration and continuous development workflow for Power BI reports, but in particular, fully automated. This is not the first time I spoke about this one. I did a series, and actually, I have one of the videos that I have on the internet is on this topic. But that video was recorded, sorry, in April 2024. And when I recorded that one of the big things that I didn't wasn't comfortable about is that I needed, in order to do this process, I needed to have an account with the MFA, I mean, multi-factor authentication, disable of that account. That require for you to be able to have accounts like that, to temper a little bit with the overall security on Active Directory. And that, I mean, you know, from demos and to show the capacities and the capabilities of the API and what you can do with automation. I mean, that perfectly worked. Actually, it was a very good video. But going into a company and say that you have to do that in order just to automate your reports, that's just too much of a security issue for you to be able to do that. But things have changed since April 2024. It's been almost year and plus. And then recently, some of the recent things that have been released in Fabric is one connection that allowed me to connect to Azure DevOps using service security principles, app registrations or service principles. And that allows us to do full automation, which is awesome. And that's exactly what I wanted to show. I took again that concept and I'm just going to do it once again fully automated without any, hey, but you have to do that. No, now we have a fully compliance with security best practices. So this is exactly what I wanted to show. It took me some time, but I think the demo that I'm going to show you, it's quite nice. I'm showing you, this would be the introductions of a series that I'm doing. The reason why I'm also recording this one is because many companies and professionals had approached me and asked me about, hey, you know what? We have a series of Power BI. Oh, no, I have an ecosystem of reports in other tools like Click or Tableau, and we're very interested in moving into Power BI. Now, what do we got to do? And that same people going with the same ideas and asking, okay, but now we wanted to move to Power BI, but we're hearing a lot about that Fabric, and I don't understand. I mean, I want Power BI. What does Fabric has to do with anything of this one? And I have to explain that right now Power BI, it's one of the core experiences within Fabric, and it will continue to be like that. I mean, it will be more and more and more integrated to Fabric. So, in other words, and in layman terms, if you want Power BI report, you have to have Fabric, right? I mean, Fabric will be the means by which you can have your Power BI reports moving forward, not the other way around. So, it's important for us to understand. But then the question is then, how do I start with Fabric in order to provision or to support my Power BI report ecosystem? And this is exactly what I wanted to address in this series. Now, in this particular video, I'm not going to go into the detail that I will have to do in order to do the whole implementation. What I'm going to do in this video is just to show you the end result of the series, right? For two reasons. Because for you to understand what we're talking about, right? What the type of components, and if you're a seasoned professional and you don't want the step-by-step explanations on all the elements that I'm just going to explain, fine. Go get the code. The code is published, is ready, is in my blog. You can take it, adapt it, and if you have the knowledge, You can go through the README file that I created for that repository, and that I'm comfortable, confident. I think it's a better word, that you will be able to get it done and install it and make it work, right? And of course, you can reach out to me if you have any problems. But if you're a Power BI practitioner with very basic doubts as to what Fabric is, how Power BI, and if you also are a Power BI practitioner that are not quite used to how to deal with the CI/CD flow, how to deal with reports, not with the PBIX files, but now in Fabric we have Power BI reports, and you want to understand what that means, what it is, how to make changes, how to publish reports on Fabric. You need to go through, or I invite you to read through the rest of the series, and I'm pretty confident that it will give you the answers that you're looking for. All right. So moving forward, this is the series. I'm going to publish the video that I'm recording right now here on this one, and this is the code. Click on it. It will take you to a repository with all the code that I'm about to show you working resides. So you can take that code, go through the instructions, and you will be able to do exactly what I'm just doing, which I hope it's cool. And it will, if you're a seasoned professional or you're experienced in Fabric and Power BI, I'm guessing that there will be just whatever. I mean, the video and the code will be anything. Will have everything that you need in order to understand what's going on behind the scenes. If you're starting from scratch, I will recommend to read through the series and understand all the aspects so you're comfortable when you're going to the Fabric, the Power BI adoption. You're very confident what you're doing and take good decisions about this one. Now, so without further ado, I think this video and what I'm about to show you is this. And we don't have to start from scratch. Microsoft published an article that's titled "Choose the Best Fabric CI/CD Workflow Option for You." Now, it has many different options. I think there are 4 options in total. But specifically, what I'm about to show you is the actual implementation of option number 3, which is deploying using Fabric deployment pipelines, right? Why that is? The reason is because, one, you only need to have a very basic level of branching strategies. You don't have to have a very complicated branching process. For Power BI practitioners, that's a very nice thing to have. They don't have to go, from zero to hero from the get-go. Just try to. They just want to publish the report, and this option gives you the path with the least resistance. In addition, it'll take advantage of most of the Fabric built-in capabilities. So that's my recommendation for people who are starting for. So that's exactly why I'm just starting with option number 3. And this is exactly what I'm about to show you. All right. So again, I'm not going into a theory. I will deep dive on the series of articles that I will be publishing in the next few weeks. But for the time being, let's jump right into this. Okay. So in order to do that, I'm going to go first into my, So as I mentioned, we need 3 types of infrastructure. One infrastructure that supports Fabric, and another infrastructure in Fabric to support your Power BI reports, right? So there's 2 layers of infrastructure that we need. Again, and I repeat myself if that doesn't make any sense. One, we need a type of infrastructure to support Fabric, and then another type of infrastructure to support our reports, right? What is the type of infrastructure that we need in order to support Fabric? And basically, that infrastructure can be expressed in 2 resources. The Fabric capacity being the most important resource that we need in order to work with Fabric. And what is that? What is a Fabric capacity? Okay, without demystifying the concept, this is a Fabric capacity. As you can see, it's a Fabric capacity, and if I click, I can see that different type of service levels, right? And in Fabric, a capacity, it's expressed in capacity units, all right? So this capacity units is the number of units that you can consume from Fabric, right? So every time you create and use the software as a service that Fabric provides, it consumes from this capacity unit until you exhaust the number of capacity units that you have, right? And then off you go, all right? So not going to go into detail about this one. I just want to make sure that you understand that the capacity lives in Azure, and you need a capacity in order to operate in Fabric. Now, how we connect or how we create this infrastructure, it could be many ways to do it. And my example and the example code that I'm just providing, I'm using a very straightforward PowerShell. So let me show you really, really quickly. All right, so I'm just going to go and I'm going to my Team Explorer. I'm on the wrong branch, unfortunately, but let me just switch back really quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my Fabric Catalyst. Yes, so here I'm just going to need to show you really quickly that this PowerShell script creates everything that you need. Okay, that I'm just going to show you pretty much creates all the infrastructure needed. In the README file, there's a list of resources that this script creates when you run it, right? So it includes the resource group, the capacity, security groups, and you just need to define who is going to be the admin, who's going to be the contributor, and what is the name of the service principal that you want to use in order to automate the process, right? So that's very simple. So basically, you just go into your core Azure infrastructure, you temper or you change the values accordingly, right? And then run the PowerShell script, and the PowerShell script will create everything, right? In this example, this PowerShell script created my capacity, my key vault, and also created sorry, it also created the service principal that I will be using right here. Yeah, I call it CI/CD flow app automation. Now, once you create the infrastructure, you just need to do a couple of additional, grant additional permissions, like the permission from Graph. And Graph, it's basically your Active Directory, right? So you just need to allow the app to being able to read information from security groups and users, because the process, and you will see what I'm talking about in just a second, requires that for it to provision and to grant permissions to the workspaces in Fabric. Okay, so basically that's it. It also, you need to confirm a couple of additional things. For instance, the PowerShell scripts creates the key vault, and in addition to the key vault, it also create a secret within that key vault, which is this one, right? That contains the secret of your app that we will use to configure the rest of the services. So to just make sure that you have in this key vault the secret with the secret of the security principal that we're going to use. That's really, really important, right? So basically, and well, in addition to that one, I created the different groups. As I mentioned, I didn't want to, and I usually don't use hello world applications that break the minute you step out of the demo. And there are not, that you cannot use in a real world type scenario. And, performing everything with administration permissions is just not the way to do it. So that's why I created also security groups with three levels of permission. I create the owner. In this case, I'm going to be applying me as an owner of the overall process, contributors, and one particular group called automation that will contain the service principal. And through this group, I will grant permissions to that service group. Okay. All right. So that's Azure. Now, let's go and talk a little bit about additional configurations. All right. So the second service that we will need is DevOps, Azure DevOps. That's why I'm using. So remember, you have your DevOps organization and you have your projects. In this case, this is what I'm showing you. Part of the configurations that I did on this one is to create One, environments. These environments are the ones that I'm using in my code, as you can see here. Right, whoops, sorry. Yes, so if I take, for instance, this variable, you will notice, or you will see that in this variable, I'm creating, or I'm referring an environment and a name. So this one is this one. So I'm saying when I'm executing my YAML pipeline that it will use when the environment is development, that I will use this environment, right, as configured in my variable for development. Okay. So I'm creating the environments. I already did it. Also, I need to create my pipelines. In this case, I'm going to use the auto deployment pipeline. This will create Fabric resources, but I'm just not going to get ahead of myself. Just bear in mind that part of the README file instruct you, or the instructions include the creation of this pipeline, and also. One additional important things is also the service connections, okay? So it also tells you that you need to create a service connection using that it will be represented by the service principal, okay? Oh, so basically that's with regards of Azure DevOps. I mean, of course, you need your org, you need your application. That is not part of the configuration. I'm just assuming that you already have your DevOps organization and a project in which you will be using or installing this tool. All right, fair enough. Now, in Fabric, we need a couple of things. Again, in the instructions, we have one of the important things that we need is permissions, because we need to give permission to our service principal to do some operations, right? To begin with, we need to give the service principal, we need to grant the ability to interact and to use the capacity, all right? So remember that I said that we created security groups? Well, through those security groups, we're granting that to the capacity, okay? So in the instructions, I mentioned that you need to grant to the capacity the ability for the service principal to be able to use it and provision workspace attached to this capacity. So you can see the capacity and in the contributor permissions, I'm granting this group the contributor permission over the capacity. In addition, we also need a couple of additional tenant settings. In particular, if I do service principal, right, we need this grant the service principal the ability to create workspaces, the ability to call public Fabric APIs, the ability to read only admin APIs, and the ability to access admin APIs. Because the tool that I develop can actually need those permissions in order to create workspaces, pipelines, domains, and so additional components. Okay? So once you're done with that one, so you will go into the possibility of first creating or running the pipeline. Okay. So let me just put this one side by side for you to be able to see the process. Okay. So in my left-hand side, I have the pipelines. I'm just going to click auto deployment. And in my right is Fabric. Okay. So in Fabric, you will be very familiar if you're coming from the Power BI world, you're a Power BI practitioner. I guess you will find this one very familiar because, I mean, it's basically the same portal, which has different characteristics. But as you can see here, right, if I go to my traditional Power BI, it's the same thing. You have workspaces where you publish your reports. And then through the workspaces, you grant the permissions and all that stuff. I mean, it's the same in Fabric. In Fabric, we have the same concept, workspaces, and a workspace is your ecosystem where your semantic models and your Power BI reports will live in and, provide the functionality of the report to external agents. Now, I'm talking very specifically about Power BI semantic models because this is very, I'm thinking closely to a Power BI practitioner because that's the use case that I wanted to address. However, the same principles and techniques that I'm going to show you, it can work with any other Fabric item. You know, if you are a data engineer and you're wondering about data lake houses or pipelines or stuff like that, it's exactly the same. It will apply the same principles, basically the same. Okay, so just bear in mind, I'm using Power BI because of the audience, right? That I'm just trying to address here. Now, all right. So as I mentioned, we already have the infrastructure on Azure. Now, what about the infrastructure on Fabric, right? The infrastructure of Fabric, it's a little bit different because Fabric is a service, so software as a service, correct? So that means that we need to treat it as such. And the way we interact with Fabric is through the APIs. Now, there are several ways you can create workspaces and the software as a service infrastructure that we need in Fabric in order to publish our reports. Obviously, we can do it manually. Okay, so we can go to workspaces and we can create new workspace and do the whole process of giving a name, connecting this workspace to a Git branch and all that stuff. Obviously, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to industrialize this process via automation. And this is exactly what I'm going to do. Now, what I'm going to show you right now is a tool that I created called Fabric Catalyst, which purpose is designed in order to create Fabric infrastructure. Okay. So in this case, I'm just going to run my tool, Fabric Catalyst. And I'm just going to give a few, I'm not going to go into details. I'm just saying that I want to create a domain called Fabric Catalyst as a domain auto deployment. I'm going to call this workspace and I'm going to create series demo, right? I want to create 3 workspaces, one for dev, one for UAT, and one for production. I want this to, security groups are my workspace admins, okay, the contributors and the owners, understanding that the contributors will be the people that will be creating reports. So they need permission in order to create stuff. That's hence the permission to the workspace. And also, I'm going to create, in addition, a deployment pipeline, which the functionality I'm going to show you a little bit once the process completes. And then I am going to branch this new workspace that I'm just going to create out of this special branch that I created with some additional code that will allow me to automate one additional process. So, and then I'm just going to run it, okay? With these parameters, cool of what are my choices are. So let's run it, okay? Now, while it runs, I just wanted to show you a couple of things, right? So a couple of things about the code. Just taking advantage of time while these things function. And I want you to take a look at the README file again, just, yeah. So again, as I mentioned in the README file, I think it's, yeah, just see the README file, indicates all the things that I just mentioned, right? What are the API permissions? What is the type of steps that you need to do? The creation of the service principal and the README file walks you through 3 different type of portals. Azure, Fabric, and DevOps. Okay, just to be aware of that one. So you can find this README within the code. The code also explains this file structure that you can see in the code, right? So I'm pretty confident that if you read carefully and thoroughly through the README file, you will have very close to the final product that we desire to install. All right. Now, we are now on the part in which this starts to create stuff. Okay, now, yeah, and this is another thing that I wanted to show you in the code, right? So in the code, in the workspace functions, I'm interacting directly with the interfaces, with API interfaces to these workspaces to create stuff. So via the interaction with the APIs that allow me to do most of the things, or yeah, a lot of the things that I'm just going to show you. There's many tools, and I'm talking about the other options that you have in the first article of the series called infrastructure, and I'm explaining a little bit more in detail the options that you have to create on the side of Fabric the workspaces. For the time being, what I can positively show you at this point of time is that my workspace is done. So I just need to refresh this one a couple of times because sometimes it just takes time. So workspaces, there it goes, right? So as you can see, this process will continue. Right now, I created my development environment. It will continue to create the UAT production and the pipeline at the end. But I can't go ahead and show you what the process or my tool created. So as you can see here, it already created a develop workspace. It also created this this workspace with Git integration. So it's already Git integrated. And as you can see here, it also created a branch that I'm going to use in order to integrate. So nothing of this, I've done it manually, right? I mean, outside of the configurations, the rest, it's been completely automated, okay? So I already have this branch called Workspace W Series Demo. Okay, so let me just go really quickly to show you and to have this one opened and ready to show you a couple of things that's going to happen. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my DevOps, repositories, okay, branches, and then, and this is the branch. As you can see here, remember that I mentioned that I took it from one particular branch that I'm using that contains some additional code that it will help me to automate part of the process once we start to develop our Power BI workspaces. Okay, Power BI reports. Now, again, let's leave it run it, and from the perspective of infrastructure, let's say for the time being we're done, right? We can confidently say to our Power BI practitioners or Power BI analysts or the people that actually design reports, hey, done. Go ahead and publish your reports. There's a workspace and Fabric ready for you to do so. The name is WS Series, and you have all the permissions that you need in order to do so. Like, okay, fine. Now I'm going to take the hat of the Power BI practitioner and the Power BI designer, and this is what's going to happen next. Okay, so I'm going to take my report, and as you can see here, this is one report. I mean, probably if you're a Power BI practitioner, you've seen millions of that, and even much better than mine. This one is a very simple example. But now I'm using local my Power BI desktop, and then the question is, how do I send this report to Fabric, right? And you probably you can be either one or two people, right? You can be one of those Power BI practitioners that are used to handle Power BI reports and PBIX files and sending or publishing into SharePoint and saying, okay, this production, it's now published in the SharePoint site or the SharePoint location where production reports are meant to be stored, right? So probably you're one of those people. Now, if you're one of those people, I'm going to tell you that once you move into Fabric, that's gone, right? We are not going to deal with PBIX files anymore. Once we publish our report into Fabric, that will be deconstructed into a software as a service version, right? And it will deconstruct that binary folder into two separate, let's say, components: the report and the semantic model. Okay, bear with me. I'm going to show you right here, right now. What is that? What did that even mean? Okay, so I have my Power BI report here. So all I have to do is just publish the report. So let's do that. And as you can see here, I already have my the workspace that I just created. Obviously, the process creates the permissions necessary for me to do so. And there it goes, right? So it's publishing. And let's give it a couple of minutes and then off it goes. So there it goes. So as you can see here in my dev, now we have my 2 reports being published. And let me just, probably would be word for me to have this one like this, side by side, for you to be exactly what does that also mean, right? Because now notice that here in my Fabric, and notice on my left, the one that I'm just pointing you out, Fabric, is where I'm just storing everything that it's created and stored in Fabric because of I configured as such. And right now we publish our report in our workspace, and we have 2 elements being created, so that's expected. But notice that we have source control here, and we have 2 changes pending to be committed. We need to commit those 2 changes. Commit means send this representation of your reports to the source control, right? So let's do this. So let's, these are my new reports published, okay? So let's commit, let's see what happened. Okay. So once our changes are committed, now take your eyes on your left because I'm going to refresh the contents of my branch. And notice that now we don't have a PBIX file anymore, right? We don't have the, the binary version of the report. Now we have 2 things. We have the report, right? The report.report, which means the graphical components of the report. And we have the semantic model on the other hand. So from this point forward, we can treat both of them, let's say, and actually by different people in different timings with different features. And you can develop your report from the graphical perspective independently from the design of your semantic model, if you like, right? And you can actually, with this, you can track the changes that you're doing to your report. And that's one of the big asks and one of the cool things that we have from Power BI in Fabric is the ability to be able to see the changes on your report and to have code control your report. Now, we have now our report. It's published. It's working. We can click on this one. And yeah, no, everything seems to be working okay. We have our report. All right, cool. Now, from the perspective of the publishing, let's say that we're done. So the first stage is completed. We were able to push our report, all right? Now, the second thing that we need to think about is what's going to happen once we have changes to the report, right? How we are going to have, because now this specifically says that this is a development workspace, right? And during the provision of my tool, I created 3 different instances. I created dev, but also created a UAT or test and a production. So it's not showing here just because I haven't clicked refresh, but let's click refresh and you will see a couple of additional things. So workspaces, and now, whoops, once again, let's click refresh once again. There it goes. Yes. So now we have a dev, we have a production, and we have UAT, right? And notice also that part of my process, as I mentioned, we also created one thing called pipeline. So what does that mean? Or how does that look like? Okay. So this is a DevOps pipeline, but the pipeline that I'm talking about is a Fabric deployment pipeline. And this is how a Fabric deployment pipeline looks like. Also, it was created by my tool. So let's click on it. And you will see that pipeline contains 3 stages: 1 deployment, 1 test, and 1 production. And each of those workspaces, it's been attached to each of the workspaces that we created. All right, because that's the intention. So at this point of time, the 3 workspaces should be in sync. Oh, in this case, the production seems not to be in sync. Let's see. It does not contain, let's see. All right, yes. So what does that mean? That means that we publish the report, and then part of the provisioning process includes the execution of the deployment between stages. So I think this was a little bit fast. I was a little bit faster than the provisioning tool. So, but it doesn't matter. We can definitely show you an example of what's going to happen between these two. But I think it's a good example just to tell you what's the purpose of the deployment pipeline. It's just to outline the differences between development, test, and production. You know, at any point of time, we would like for those three environments, right, to be the same with just different connections, right? Development pointing to development, testing pointing to testing or UAT, which is usually a subset or a representative part of your production data, but nonetheless production data in your production, which is the actual data that you want to use. All right. That being said, let's walk and let's complete this demo because, again, I don't want it to take too much time as the series will talk in depth of each and every one of these components. But what I'm going to do now, it's assuming or presenting the case where, okay, now we need to make a change in our report, and that report should go all the way to production. Okay? Now, let's also imagine for the time being that we want to control, that we don't want anything to change into production without any validation, right? So how do we do that? Now, that's why we need right now take advantage of those two platforms, one Fabric and the other one DevOps. In DevOps, remember that we created environments for each of the environments that we have. And I'm just going to take the production environment. And what I'm going to do is in approvals of checks, I'm going to add myself as an approver, right? So I'm just going to click next. And I'm going to say nothing can be published on production unless I specifically approve it. And I don't think I need to explain too much about why this is important, because we don't want angry customers saying that, with the latest changes that you did, you break the report and we cannot use it. Correct? So it's my responsibility to check that everything is correct before I click approve. And then those changes, whatever those changes are, flow and get promoted to production. That's the whole intention. All right. So now from let's say that I'm just going to take for the second the hat of a DevOps engineer. I'm just going to put my hat as a DevOps or Power BI practitioner. And what does that mean? Okay. So we have our development and we wanted to introduce a change to our report. Okay. So what do I have to do? All right. Now that we have our report in our versioning control, we can do something like this. Let me show you, right? So we can do like something like this. I'm going to go into my source control, right? And I'm just going to go to current branch is this one. And I'm just going to change, actually, I'm going to branch out to a new workspace. Okay. And my new branch is going to call feature. Okay. I'm going to change this to my report, right? So based on this current branch that I have and the workspace, I'm going to call Hector's Sandbox, right? That's going to be the name of my new workspace. I'm just going to call branch out. Whoops. Well, I don't know why. Wait. Okay. For some reason, branch out to workspace. All right, because let me just do something really quickly, and there's a reason why I'm happening. This one is the reason is this. So I'm going to admin portal. Remember the capacities discussion that we have at the beginning. I'm just going to take just a few clicks. Okay. So I'm using my trial capacity, right? And here in the contributor permissions, I said that I'm just I granted just the ability to create or to manipulate capacity only to this group, and in this group I'm not into it. So just let me do something really quickly, like adding me, right, my user as a member of the people able to use the capacity. Now with that little change, let me go back to my demo, and hopefully I will be able to do what I wanted to do. Okay, so back again. Sorry for this deviation, but source control, and then like this, and then I'm just going to branch out to new workspaces. Again, the branch is going to call feature, changes on the report. Okay, it's going to be based on this branch. The new branch is going to be called Hector Sandbox. Well, actually, I'm going to use Hector, the naming convention, of course. Hector, this sandbox. Okay. Okay, let's branch out. Well, no. Okay, so I'm just going to do it in a different way. Okay, that would be a good opportunity, but probably it would just take time for the permissions to deploy and so on and so forth. It's okay. I'm going to show you a different technique. Basically, is just the same. Okay, so we have our branch, and we have branches, and we have this branch. Okay, so how about taking a new branch? Okay, let's call it feature. Again, changes on my report, right? So create, and then changes on my report, right? So if I go and I'm using Visual Studio, probably you feeling more comfortable with Visual Studio, no, with Visual Studio Code or anything, by all means, Visual Studio is just nothing in particular. It's just a convenient way for me to show you in a very graphic way what's going to happen. I think that's why I use Visual Studio for demos and stuff, because it's allowed me to show you very easily all this stuff that I'm just doing, right? So you can see here that this is the workspace that I create. This is a new branch that I have, changes on my report. I'm just going to take this one. Okay, check it out. Now with this one, okay, changes on my report, changes on my report. On my report, yes, this is a previous one. Just let me take, yeah. So to avoid any confusion, so changes on my report. Now I have the code, and I have the current version of my report as we explained here. All right. So I'm going to, and now let's go back to our Power BI desktop. All right. So I'm just going to close this one, or yeah. So I'm going to close or open. This is going to close, open, browse this device. And then I'm going to use to my branch. Okay. So Fabric, and I have my report, and I have this. Okay. So I'm now working locally with my report. And now I'm going to do a change to my report, because that's probably they want what they want me to do as a Power BI analyst is to make a design, a change in the design of this report, and they don't like this metric. Let me show you really quickly. Okay, so there it goes. Boom. Okay, so let's refresh our semantic model. Refresh this one. Come on. Yeah, it will take a little bit of time. Sorry for keep you guys waiting. Okay, and refresh now, because now, remember, we are not working anymore on the Power BI and the PBIX file. We are not working directly with the report as a project, right? And again, divided the visuals versus the semantic model, and we have it. Now, let's say that, this visual, I don't want this one to happen anymore. And one additional thing that we want is for this visual to be, instead of, instead of a cluster, I wanted to make it like this. Yeah, like this. Yeah, this is like this. All right. All right. So now we created a change. So let's just save our changes. Okay. Now, one important thing to consider is that many changes are happening in Fabric, one of which is that Power BI now needs to have one additional preview feature, which is the Power BI reports. So it says upgrade your report format into Power BI in S format. We can upgrade or not upgrade. Well, let's keep it the way it is. All right, let's don't upgrade it. Okay, just let's save it the way it is. The way, and the reason is because I'm just saving in the same format as Fabric deconstructed it when we publish it to the code repository. Make sense? Remember, we publish it, and that PBIX binary was deconstructed in a versioning control format, and that's the same format we are going to keep. That makes sense? All right. Now, we make the changes, right? And then what we need to do is just push those changes back, all right? Because we're working on a branch. And then these are my new changes to my report. Remove visual and change the graph, right? So let's commit and push. And then the rest of the rest of the process is versioning control practices, right? Best practices. What does that mean? That means that we submitted the changes in our code, right? We have the new version here, and we need to submit a pull request from these changes back to, in this case, the original one, which is the workspace that I originally that I took as the source of those changes. So now we can track exactly what changed, right? And we can comment as a developers, hey, this change, I don't know, what was your intention? Why did you remove this visual? It was what is the user story behind this change, so on and so forth. All right. So we just have one commit, and then the rest we're going to do is just to create. And then after the discussion, the debate, we are confident with the changes, so we can prove it. And then we are going to complete. Now, before I click complete, I'm just going to prepare a couple of things, right? I'm just going to go to my pipelines, because one pipeline automatically will be triggered. Remember that I said that when I create this branch, I create it from a special branch with some additional code that will allow me to do some automation. I'm going to show you what that means. Okay, so if I complete, and I complete the merge, right? A couple of things that you will see in a few seconds. So complete merge, done, it's completed. Now, if I refresh this one, my development environment, now it's telling me, hey, you created some code here that I need to push, right? I need to bring back to this one because it's in the code. And until I actually click update all, I won't be able to put, that needs to be a conscious action for you to be able to push the changes from the code. But we are doing this one automatically, right? Because now this becomes like, the integration of all the changes coming from many different developers, many different Power BI developers, probably contributing to the same report in different type of capacities, right? And then this will be integrating all the changes. And the way we do it is that instead of one person have to be, clicking update all every single time, what I'm doing right now is to automate this process. So basically this pipeline, what it's doing, it's going to do three things. But the immediate one with regards of this workspace is basically is as if you click the update all. This is automating this process. So that means that we can keep this workspace away from any direct development. And we're making sure that all your development and changes will come and funnel in a right way, which means creating a new branch, doing our changes in a safe environment, right? Not interacting or not tampering with anybody else's changes, right? Until we're ready, and then after then we are good. So as you can see here, now it just integrate those changes automatically by the pipeline. Did this, all right? Now we check in our workspace and check this out. Now we have the changes, all right? And the rest of the process is going to be the deployment of my pipelines, because now we have it on dev, but then we need to push that one to UAT and production. All right. Now, obviously, I think we need to, UAT is going to run automatically. But remember that I put an approval on production to prevent any changes into production without me approving it and validating those changes. So this is what it's going to do right now. So just refresh again to see, because right now it's comparing the three workspaces. It will detect that between dev and UAT are different, right? So what it's going to do is going to tell me, what are the changes? And this pipeline will tell me that, yes, the model and the report design change, right? And I can actually, again, I can click deploy myself, going into actually click on this button. But again, this is not something that I want. I want this process to be automated. And that's why I delegated that functionality to a pipeline that it will, do it properly, right? And with the right validations and with the right approvals. So right now, notice that the pipeline is in the stage of deploying to UAT. So it's about to reach the point in which this is going to kick in. So, and boom, there it goes, right? So it just triggered the deployment from my dev to test. And then what does that mean is that all your changes in dev will be promoted to UAT. Now, and the rest is obviously my changes in production. But before I approve into production, I will go to my dev environment or my UAT environment, because we're saying, okay, there's changes ready for you to test. And I go here and I notice that, oh, no, there's no changes. I mean, how can I approve moving to production if my UAT environment is not giving me, the confident that any changes are going to be good when reached to production. So, I mean, I immediately would say, I'm not going to approve it because on my UAT it's not working. And obviously, I know why it's not working, because I'm not going to go into many details, but this is somehow expected. This is something that I want you to see. And I know exactly why this is not working, because we need to make a substitution of the connection coming from your Power BI desktop into the Fabric cloud service. But again, I'm not going to go into detail. I'm going to go into detail during the series. All right. But for the time being, what I'm going to show you, and with this, I'm just going to wrap it up the video, is this. So I know that I don't want to approve this change. That's why I put an approval, and this stage is waiting me to say yes or no. I mean, go or no go. So of course, I'm not going to approve this one. Why? Because I cannot see the UAT environment with the required changes. Okay, so reject, and then off it goes, right? So we keep our production working, and we don't have any angry users complaining about our changes going from development to production and breaking the production environment. So with this demo, I just want you to show you all the what do you say? the automation capabilities that we have, and what the actual code does. It's really important for you to understand all those aspects. But I think this is a very good overview of the whole problem. Again, in this few additional articles, I will go into into specifics on each of these components. Right. First, I'm going to tackle on the infrastructure, go more deep dive on the difference between what's the Fabric versus what's the Azure infrastructure needed and the different tools that you have. The second one is development cycle and continuous integration, a little bit more on what from the Power BI practitioner needs to understand in terms of branching and how and why do you need to create a new branch and the mechanisms of branching out and merging back and the pull requests and what the purposes and the benefits of being able to detect the differences between environments, right, and your reports. And this third one is going to be talk about a lot about deployment pipeline. I mean, once again, once we have our changes, right? Once we have our changes, what we can do with our deployment pipelines. For instance, this was very straightforward case. But what if we want to selectively deploy one component? So this deployment pipelines in Fabric allows us actually to selectively deploy different components. Let's say that I want report A and B, but not report C. You can do that. You can do it. In addition to approvals, we can also add many other different checks before we merge into production. But again, I'm going to talk about more on that one in my third article. Woof. So for the time being, I think I'm very good and feel comfortable with this information. I'm pretty sure you will find it useful. And if you wanted to know more and you wanted to go deep dive with me, wait for me to and follow the whole series. You will find some additional information. Nonetheless, remember the code and the README file that I prepare for you. It's here. So by all means, go and check it out. All right. So for the time being, I'm good. I see you guys. Happy holidays. I wish you the best for this 2026 year and talk to you later. Bye.